With good program architecture, debugging is a breeze, because bugs will be where they should be. David May, computer science professor and microprocessor specialist. Logging. It's the process of recording application actions and state to a secondary interface. In other words, writing your program actions to a file or a terminal in order to have better control of the program flow. This part of software development often gets overlooked by programmers, which leads to countless hours of painful debugging. However, when used correctly, logging is an extremely powerful tool which lets any programmer quickly understand what happened in the program at a certain time. But how do you start logging? Well, you need to get acquainted with logging levels. That's right, every logging library gives you the ability to log information on a certain level. There are 5 main logging levels that you must know. These are debug, info, warning, error, and critical. Debug level is used during the development process or during bug fixing and troubleshooting. All the developer-specific information goes under this level. Info level is used for logging any important default operations of your program, like default user or system-driven actions. Warning level is used for logging events that could potentially become an error in the long run. This logging level is supposed to help you track down errors. Error level is used for writing down errors, and errors are mistakes that can affect the execution of the program in some bad way. And critical level is basically doomsday. The program is dead or severely damaged, and the last thing it does is writing this log. There are a bunch more rarely used levels like notice or trace, and some big projects, like Linux system for example, have even more different logging levels. If you want to know this information, you can check out the description. Alright, now you know what logging is, and you know what logging levels are. But what information do you even log? Well, there is no way to know in advance, meaning that when you are writing a program, you cannot know what information will be a must. Hence, you write those logs that can potentially be useful in the near future. Here are some logging tips. Logs should be short but informative, and a single log file should be enough for you to understand what happens all over your program. That's why you should include additional data like time and context for the log. You should write logs in English, due to ASCII being a reliable character system. You shouldn't log passwords and other personal information. Also, you should think about who will be reading your logs and write them accordingly. Well, now you're ready to write your first logs. Unsurprisingly, every programming language has a logging library, and since it's a Python video, let's dive in some Python practice. Hey, before we continue with practice, I want to play a little game with you. Press that like and subscribe button right now, and if you don't find this video useful by the end of it, you can always unsubscribe, remove the like, and even take one back. Enjoy the practice. Alright, so let's start with the practice. In Python, a module for logging is named, well, logging, and if we import it, and if we look inside of the logging module, we can see that there is a lot of things to consider here. But don't get too scared. All you need to know to do basic logging in your program are all of the logging levels and also a thing named, where is it? Oh, there it is, basic config. This thing will let us configure a so-called logger, which is an object that will log all of the data to a file or to a terminal. Let me show you how this works. I have an example here with a simple logging. As you can see, I import a logging module, and then I do logging.basicconfig, and then I give it a file name and additional data. This I initialize a logger, which will log all of the data to a file logs.log. By the way, extension for logging files is .log, with the file mode as write, because we will be writing to a file, and the lowest logging level I will be logging at is debug. So that means that the lowest will be the debug and the highest will be critical. And here I wrote a simple program which consists of 3 processes. We just log the information about each process being complete. And as you can see here, I have a loop which just lets me to choose different processes I want to complete. If the process equals 1, we log the info that user chose this process. If it equals 2, we log the process 2, same with the process 3. And if the user chooses a process that's not in the list of processes, we give a warning, because this could potentially become an error in the long run, that user chose a process that's not in the list of processes. And we also give the input of the user to the log. And if we have a keyboard interrupt error, that means that user wants to exit the program, we log it as info because it's the intended way to exit the program. If it was an error, we would have logged it as an error. And now let's see how all of this thing basically works. If I launch it, as you can see, I may choose different process I want to complete. Let's choose from 1 to 6, then some letters, and then an empty space. And then I keyboard interrupt exit from the program. As you can see, a logging file was created during the execution of the program in the same directory I'm working in. And if I check this file, we can see all of the data about our program execution. We can see that we started the program execution. The user chose the process 1 to 3. And then the user started choosing processes that are not in the list of processes. And we can see what inputs did the user give us. Inputs here are important because we can see how the user might have misunderstood the program, and he might have even been choosing the right processes, but the program might have been bugged. And through the logging file you can see what was right and what wasn't. And then you can see that the user has exited the program after giving all of these wrong inputs, and we can see that we finished the program execution. And basically we can understand from a single log file, we can understand what happens all over the program, and that's how it should be. Alright, now let's move to a bit of a... As you can see here, we used only info and warning, and now let's move to a bit of a different and better example. Alright, so here we got an implementation of a simple calculator, which is intended to crash every time it has the wrong inputs, so I can show you how the debug and errors work. As you can see, I import the logging library and I initialize the logger, as I did in the previous example, and I start the program execution and I log it. Then I get a first number, an operator, and a second number from the user, and then I, as you can see, try to convert the numbers to ints. And here I log this info as debug because this is developer specific information and it's suited only for the developer to read. And as you can see, I log that the first number was converted and the second number was converted, and if one of those numbers couldn't be converted, I do logging.exception, which basically logs an error but with additional information about the value error, And that's basically for the conversion. And then our calculator only supports addition and subtraction. So if the operator is different, I log an error because, well, this process affects the overall execution of the program directly. That's why it's an error. And in other case, I just start the operation. And here I log as debug that the addition or subtraction was performed because this can be considered as developer-specific information. And then I end the program execution. Let's see how this works. 2 plus 2. We get 4, and if we check our logging file, we can see that we started the program execution, the conversions were successful, we started the operation, addition was performed, and the program execution ended. And that's what I'm talking about. From a single log file, we can understand the whole program execution. And also what I could have done here is I could have added the result of the execution of the program. Great, now let's try something that could give us an error in this program, like 2 different letters as the operator and 2. As you can see, we started the program execution, the conversions were correct, which leads us to think that the calculator does not support an operator, and here we see what operator did the user choose. So you can see that it logged as an error and the program execution ended. And let's try the exception one. For example, 2 plus and different letters. What the heck? Alright, so I fixed this problem, and now if I launch the program, I can put 1 here, I can put some different operator and an unexisting number, and if I check the logging file, I can see that we started the program execution, the first number was correct, which leads us to think that the second number wasn't, because we get an error, and this is the logging.exception that I was talking about. We get the whole information about the error we got in our program. And we even get the output. And also we get an error that the calculator does not support this kind of operator. And then the program execution ends. And this is basically how you would implement logging in your default software development. Obviously it's not even close to what you would do in a real life example, because these examples are basically just for me to show you how all of this works. So in real life world there will be more different of logging events, and that's why I brought to you example 3, which is a lab task for my first year university studies that I did, and it is a ticker counter simulation in an airport, and it has logging wired up. I leave this example to you to look into it by yourself, because the video will be too long if I do it, but as you can see, here the program is just launched and a log file is created with all of the information about the simulation. All of this code will be on my GitHub down below, so you can check it out for yourself and understand how logging was implemented in the real life problems that I solved. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, follow me on GitHub and subscribe for more coding.